Welcome back to the Pitch to Product podcast. I'm your host today, Jack Dalton, Business Development Manager here at 52 Launch. I'm with Kevin Prince, the founder and owner of Quick Patents LLC, a patent IP law firm based in Las Vegas, Nevada. Kevin, it's a pleasure to have you here. Appreciate the time.
Yeah, thanks, Jack.
Absolutely. Well, we're going to get into today. We're going to cover some patent basics, some of the frequently asked questions that we get at 52 Launch, both in initial consultations with clients and clients who are 2/3 of the way through our process, who are then thinking about filing for IP. And patents are kind of the big one. I know you don't handle trademarks so much, so we'll stray away from those today. We don't tend to deal with a lot of copyright here at 52 Launch either, so it's kind of a non-issue. But
Yeah.
Patents are the big one. So get right into it. We can start kind of at the top. What are the different types of patents? Why would I get one over another? I wonder if you could walk me through that.
Sure. There's basically two types: design patents and utility patents. There's also plant patents, but I don't think in 22 years I've ever dealt with one of those.
Right.
So most inventors don't need to know about plant patents. When people are talking about patents, for the most part, they're talking about utility patents. They're considered the strongest type of patent. A utility patent protects how something works. It's theory of operation, if you will. Whereas a design patent only protects what it looks like, the ornamental appearance. So the example I give is sunglasses. If you have a pair of sunglasses that has a unique style, but it works the same way as every other pair of sunglasses, for that, you would need a design patent because you can't get a utility patent on sunglasses. That's already been done, right? So, but the style, the unique look, you could certainly get a design patent on. Now, conversely, if you were the first person to invent, say, polarized lenses, now for that, you'd want a utility patent because you don't care what the competitors' sunglasses look like. If they're using polarized lenses, you want to be able to go after them. That a utility patent on that protects the way that filter is filtering the light as it's coming through the lens. And so,
Right.
so that would be a utility patent. And so that, and they're not mutually exclusive. I've gotten both utility and design patents for the same thing many times. So it's just that they protect different aspects of the invention.
Right. Yeah, that makes perfect sense. And it makes sense why utility patents would be a little bit more substantial, maybe. Yeah.
It kind of actually, it's interesting. It kind of actually depends. There's some cases where I like design patents better than utility patents, but we can get into that going forward.
Yeah. Actually, I'd love to hear an example of one of those.
Okay. So I have a lot of clients on Amazon. They're selling products. One client in particular had what he calls the jug plug. And this is a silicon rubber plug for your 5-gallon water bottle. So you can, go to the place and fill it up and then reuse it.
Huh.
And you can't get a utility patent on a plug, right? Because that's already been done. It's called a cork,
Right.
right?
Right.
Now, maybe if it works in a different way, and there were some aspects of it that were kind of unique, but for the most part, he was just trying to protect the way it looks. And as far as Amazon goes, when he woke up one day after a lot of success and he had 100 competitors from China selling the same thing or something very similar, and his market share just went to nothing. And so he was able to use his design patents to convince Amazon to get rid of all those competitor listings.
Interesting.
And so sometimes a design patent is a little easier for people to understand. You just look at the drawings and the offending product, and it's like, yeah, that kind of looks the same. Whereas if that had been a utility patent, then some Amazon employee would have had to figure out, okay, well, how do you read claims, on a utility patent? And
Exactly.
does this claim interfere with this? So anyway, there's sometimes where, obviously, if you can get both, great. But there's sometimes when I think a design patent is adequate.
Yeah. Yeah. That makes perfect sense. And interesting. So he was able to file something like a takedown notice with Amazon without having to go through necessarily the traditional legal system.
Yes. Well,
That's
let's see.
nice.
So he had an attorney in LA who has coined the term Amazon law. Might be
Mm,
another good guest on your program, actually.
yeah.
I'll send you his info. But um, and they were able to get an injunction against all the funds of all these competitors, and the competitors all just went away because typical Chinese companies don't fight; they just go on to the next product to steal.
Yeah.
And and then he was able to get that money for his client. So
Awesome. Well, clearly they work. So that's, that's a good one.
right,
So, another question that we get mostly in initial consultations is from a client who just went and spoke to a patent attorney and didn't necessarily have a very productive consultation. Basically, the feedback they got from the attorney was great idea. It may be patentable, but you don't have enough here for me to formulate claims around. You don't have drawings. I can't actually put a patent together. So, what does somebody need to have? How far along do they need to be in the development process to A, file a provisional patent? And you can maybe elaborate a little bit on what that is. And then B, actually file a non provisional. And let's stick
yes,
with utility patents.
yeah, okay. So with utility patents, they come in those two flavors: provisional and non-provisional, or what some people call a regular patent application. A provisional is like it sounds; it's temporary. It only lasts for a year. And within that year, you have to file the non provisional in order to get the benefit of the provisional filing date. So if you file a provisional, then you have 1 year to file your non provisional. I like to think of a provisional as kind of like a placeholder in line at the patent office.
Hmm.
You're standing in line for this patent outside the patent office, but you haven't gone through the door yet. They're waiting for the ticket, which is the non provisional. And then when you get the non-provisional filed, then you can go through the front door of the patent office, get in line for the examination, and all of that fun. Hopefully, eventually, at the back door, you'll have a patent, right? So that's kind of how I look at it. There's really two advantages to a provisional and one drawback. Other than that, they're the same. Both types of patents, you need to be able to explain to somebody how you make it and how you use it. And if you can't explain to me how to make it, then I can't write a patent because I can't
Right.
put that into a document and then file it because it's not what they call enabling. It doesn't enable someone who's reading this to know how to make it. So you do have to have enough detail to know how to make it, and that doesn't mean every nut and bolt,
Hmm.
um, every resistor in your electronic circuit. No, it just means functionally, do you have all of the components figured out, how they're going to work together, how you're going to assemble them, and what this thing's going to do. And even the ugliest prototype can be enabled. I mean, the ugliest prototype that works, that demonstrates that the product is functional. At that point, you could file a patent on that. So back to the two advantages of a provisional and the one drawback. The advantages of the provisional are that they're usually less expensive to start. And so, from a cash flow standpoint, that can be an important thing because there's lots of opportunity to spend money when you're launching a product, obviously.
Oh, yeah.
And then, two, the provisional gives you 12 months to kind of put the finishing touches on this product. If you're still tinkering with it, 4 months from now, you might have an improvement that you want to get into the patent, and it's not too late at that point because you haven't filed a final patent yet. This is still a provisional. In fact, my dad, he was a amazing inventor. He had 35 patents in his lifetime.
Whoa.
Yeah. And so it was kind of a neat environment to grow up in because, we were very much encouraged to think outside the box. And he had a dental product he was working on. And I think he filed 3 provisionals on it because he kept tweaking it. He kept
Hmm.
improving it. And so what we did was we rolled up all 3 of those provisionals into the same non provisional. That is certainly doable. There's
Yeah.
your non-provisional can reference multiple provisionals. So every time you come up with kind of a blockbuster idea, you should probably get a filing date for it. File a provisional. If it costs you $65, then write it up and file it. So those are the two advantages of the provisional. The drawback of the provisional is it delays your patent. Like I said, you're just standing at the front door until you file the non-provisional, and
Hmm.
that's when the examination process starts on your patent. So, I mean, that can be important, right? If you know people are watching you, they're going to knock you off right away. Well, maybe skip the provisional, go straight to the non-provisional, and maybe even pay the extra money to the patent office to speed it up.
Yeah. Yeah, that's pretty interesting. Great. Yeah, we covered the difference between a provisional and a non-provisional. Um, Perfect. So you just started getting into this. At what point in the development process do you genuinely or generally advise people to start this? Because we have our own kind of take at 52 Launch, and I could go over what that is and maybe provide your feedback on it.
Sure.
Yeah. So generally, 52 Launch is geared towards getting inventors and entrepreneurs to revenue as quickly as possible. That's something that we do better than any of our competitors that we are aware of.
Hmm.
And that's because we do everything in house other than IP, starting with design through branding, marketing, and then we are the designers and the manufacturers, which streamlines that process from
Okay, good.
often years down to
Yeah.
usually within 12 months of actually having products to sell, which
Well, it's
is,
great. It's great to have, when you're designing something, have manufacturing in mind,
oh,
right?
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Designing and designing for manufacturing are two different
Two different.
practices.
Yes.
And generally, we advise clients to, when we get to what we call design review two, which is when we're about to start incorporating the final tweaks that the client wants on their design, on their product, we advise them to connect with an attorney and start having a conversation about a provisional. Because our feeling is with most of the products that we're getting ready to put out to market, there's something new. They're probably not being closely watched. They're not going to get ripped off right away. They're not going to get ripped off until they start making money. And since our goal is to get to cash flow positive as quickly as possible, generally we advise provisional kind of maybe a month or two before going into production. Then maybe 6 months after production starts, so 8 months later, as long as you've started selling some units, you've proved the market viability of that product to yourself, then you go and get the non-provisional. You make sure you're fully protected.
Yeah.
A trademark would come a little bit earlier in the process, but certainly we always recommend that people do searches. That's another topic that we get. A question I get a lot is, what am I actually paying an attorney to do
Right.
when they ask me to pay for a prior art search? Why can't I just go on Google Patents? Why can't I just do some basic web searches, use AI to make sure that my idea is patentable?
Right.
So that was a whole lot at you, but
Well, let me start with this, because you mentioned that I don't do trademarks, but there's a reason. I'm a patent agent. I'm not a patent attorney.
right.
So I'm an engineer, but I don't have a law degree. So the patent office lets me, as a registered practitioner, I pass the patent bar just like patent attorneys do, and I can represent clients to the patent office just like attorneys do. But
Hmm.
so they let me pretend to be a lawyer, but only in this one little area called patent prosecution. Trademarks is not part of that.
Right.
Writing a cease and desist letter would not be part of that. That's a legal activity. Uh, Helping you with your licensing agreement, that's not something I could do either. But I can do everything patents at the patent office. So, in terms of your timeline that you gave, I think that that's probably appropriate, because you once you know what the kind of the final design is going to be, and you're not adding major or significant features, then at that point it's probably safe to do the provisional. And the way we work is, if you have us write your provisional, then when it comes time to file the non-provisional, I don't charge you the full price for that. I just charge you the difference. So
Well,
the provisional, because we're doing a lot of the same work that's going to go into the
right.
non-provisional. So we apply those funds towards the non-provisional. And it doesn't have to be a year. right? If you launch the product and all of a sudden there's a copycat, but you've only been patent pending for 6 months with your provisional, you can hurry up and file a non-provisional right away. You don't have to wait the whole 12 months. So that's another reason I like the provisional. You're not locked into a delay.
Right.
You can jump in with a non-provisional as soon as you feel the need to. So I think it's prudent to do a search if you're pursuing a utility patent. I don't usually recommend we do a search on a design patent. And the reason on the design patent is because 95% of the time they go straight through the patent office anyway. We don't have the prior art issues on design patents that we do with non-provisional or with utility patents. In fact, with utility patents, it's the opposite. 95% of the time they get rejected because of prior art.
Right.
And we've got to argue with the examiner. And hopefully at some point, you'll be in the 65 to 70% of patents that do get issued.
Okay.
So that's what the reason you do a patentability search is because you want to make sure that there's not some real obvious dead ringer out there that was, patented 3 years ago and you don't know about it because they never made it to the marketplace. People always say, "Oh, I've looked everywhere. I haven't seen it." No, you haven't looked everywhere if you haven't looked into the patent literature. And
Right.
so I don't really care who does the patent search, but you gotta do 3 types of searches. Everyone starts with a keyword search, and so do we. But then you also have to determine what are the relevant classes and subclasses, because some patent practitioner, you might call it a widget, and someone else calls it a thingamabob. And if you don't search thingamabob, you're going to miss it on a keyword search. So you got to have class and subclass, right?
Yep.
And then also on your relevant A-list patents that you find that are the closest, you want to do forward and backward reference searches. And if you do that, that's a pretty thorough search. And in fact, I have an online class. I don't know, maybe you can link to it, but I have an online class that teaches you how to do that through Google Patents. So I don't really
We will
care.
absolutely link to that.
Yeah, I don't care who does the search. I just care that a search is done, because the last thing I want you to do is spend thousands of dollars on a patent application, and then boom, they reject it because of one patent that is, has everything that you have that we could have found. That's how I got in this business. I'm an inventor, and I had this idea for a brainwave reading alarm clock because I was sleeping through my alarms.
Yep.
And I thought, why is this thing trying to wake me up at a specific time? Why not try to wake you up at your peak sleep cycle when your brain is, in REM state, when the cycles per second are the highest? And
Right.
it's like a 45-minute range. And so I found this patent agent locally in Orange County, and he did a search, and he found the exact same thing patented 10 years earlier.
Wow.
And it was very eye-opening. I was like, wow, look at all the detail. It was like reading a patent on my device. It just didn't have my name on it, you know. And of
That
course
is
I was
strange.
bummed, but then I just went on to my next product. So, um, that it's important to make sure that there's no dead ringers out there. Now, the patent office is probably going to find something anyway. So a search is not like, this is a guarantee that the patent office is going to approve this. That's not how they work. Um, in fact, the MO at the patent office is pretty much, we're going to reject everything once.
Yeah.
and then you can argue, hopefully you have a reasonable examiner, and you can come to an agreement as to what the claims are going to be.
Cool. Yeah. Well, that's kind of a good segue into one of my next questions, which
Yeah.
is, if your idea for a brainwave reading alarm clock had been patented 10 years earlier, almost to the exact specifications that you were thinking, that tells you that, there are 19 million issued patents, somewhere in that range.
No,
I'm sure
we're
I'm
in the
off.
12 millions right now.
Okay. 12.
Maybe
So
worldwide, probably worldwide.
yeah, maybe that's where I got that number. Clearly, uh, many ideas that people come up with, they get hit by a lightning bolt. It's like, oh my God, this is the best idea ever. They go on to find that something like it already exists. So this is another question we get a lot: is how do I, let's say somebody is doing a patent search on their own. What are they looking for to disqualify themselves from being able to get a patent, or kind of conversely, what does their idea need to have to make it patentable?
Good question. I get that a lot too. And I get that a lot after I send back a patent search because usually the patent search is bad news, right? Um, so and this is important. People don't really understand this because they say, "Oh, I'm going to have this product and I'm going to use it for this application." And the patent office doesn't really care about your application. All they really care about, if we're talking about an article of manufacture, is the structure, the physical structure of your product. What are the physical elements that you have to put together to make this product real? Okay. And so let's say you have elements A, B, and C, and you think this thing is new. All right. So let's first do a search. If we can find A, B, and C in another patent, then it's not new. And now you either have to put your thinking cap back on and come up with a D, E, or an F that is actually important in the marketplace. Maybe that's patentable, or you skip it and go on to your next idea. If we do a search and we don't find any single patent that has A, B, and C, the next thing we're looking for is, are there any patents that have either A, B, or C? So there might be another patent that has A and B and another one that has C. Well, the patent office will say, your product is novel because there's no single patent that has A, B, and C, but it's obvious because this patent over here has A and B and this patent has C, and you could just put those two together to get your product.
Right.
That's literally that's what they call obvious. That's their definition of obvious.
Hmm.
So what you're looking for is an element D, something that is new that has a benefit that allows you to work with all those elements together to have a new benefit. It works in a unique way. And so that's what you're looking for. If you can point to that physical element that is that is has not been done before, then uh, then you should be able to get a patent on that. And in terms of like software, instead of physical elements, we're talking steps. The steps that you have the computer take, because software patents are method patents. We're not protecting the physical structure of the computer because that's probably the same as
Hmm.
every other computer. It's the steps that you're having the software causes the computer to do. And so again, there's got to be some unique step there that's never been done. And sometimes you can get a combination of things that are new and argue that that's together, that's a new structure or a new method. But generally that's the kind of a really simplistic way of explaining it.
Yeah, it took me a couple tries to get my head around those novel and non-obvious
Yeah.
thresholds that the USPTO has. But that was a great explanation. I think you made it pretty clear. You know,
I can give you an example of that I use for obviousness, because obviousness is it's very misunderstood. And when you get a rejection back from the patent office and you have an automotive product and the patent office cites some farming equipment patent against you, you're like, what the heck? I mean, why is this? It's nothing like mine, is what I hear all the time. This is nothing like my
yep.
product. And it's okay, there's something like it in there. The patent office found something that was like it. So imagine that you have a shower radio and you want to combine it with a soap dish. And so you take the housing of the shower radio and you just make a concave section in the top of the wall that holds soap, and you send that to the patent office. Well, they're going to say it's obvious because you're taking a known battery operated radio and a known concave structure for a soap dish, and you're just slapping them together. There's nothing unexpected about how that's going to work. Anyone who makes plastic enclosures for a living could do this,
Right.
right? The soap dish thing does its soap dish thing, and the radio does the radio thing, and there's no surprises about how that's going to work. Well, that would be considered obvious. But if you turn this radio on and say it blows soap bubbles to the beat of the music or something like that,
Yep.
now you have an interaction going on between those features that's not necessarily obvious. Someone who makes plastic enclosures may not know how to make that work, right? And so inside there's some structure that's connecting the soap dish part with the, the sound amplifier, and it's creating this effect. So that's kind of the level that the patent office wants to see before they're going to give you a utility patent.
Right. That was a great example. That makes a lot of sense. You know, a lot of our clients aren't necessarily putting a product out there that's totally new. So when our design team is looking for ways to protect the product with intellectual property, they're more often looking at a component of the system or the structure of the product that, for instance, if our team has designed some little widget that goes inside the product that allows us to manufacture it for 20% less and protecting that. But to us, it makes sense to protect that piece because it's protecting one of your competitive advantages in the market.
That's right.
And rather than trying to convince the USPTO that your product is totally new and different, which many times is impossible, you can just go really simple and it's more straightforward and more effective sometimes.
Yeah, that's that element D I was talking about, right?
Right.
That new thing. There's something new. People, they'll give me two patents and they'll say these look the same, but if you read through it, there's something new in the older one that wasn't in the first one, and that's why they got the patent. You just
Hmm.
have to, and it might be very small. It might be a
Yeah.
very small thing.
Interesting. Well, one kind of final topic I wanted to touch on. We get a lot of clients whose goal when they first talk to us is to license their product.
Mhm.
And we live in the world of consumer products for the most part. And there's a pretty solid theme of over the last 20 years, longer than I've been here, it's become harder and harder to get a licensing deal on a consumer product, specifically those that are pre revenue. So, people pursuing licensing deals when they haven't sold a single unit yet, we've seen the success rate of that go to way below 1%. And it's still a huge goal of most inventors to think, all right, I had this great idea. I've got a prototype I can show people. I've got some market research. I should be able to go get a licensing deal on this in 5 minutes. And it's kind of a coaching moment for us a lot of the time where we have to get them to see that it's so much easier to get those deals if you've sold 1,500 units yourself. Like what I say to people sometimes is, if you watch Shark Tank, how often do you see somebody get a deal on Shark Tank with $0 in revenue? Like it's pretty
That's
rare. It's happened,
that's
but
Mr.
it's
Wonderful's first question. What are your sales?
yeah.
Yeah.
I think we hit on a lot of the points that come up frequently in my conversations with clients or prospective clients. Um, if you've got a product idea, reach out to us, reach out to Kevin. We'd love to talk to you, hear about your idea, what the problem it solves is, and hopefully we can help. So, Kevin, thank you again for joining us. Very valuable to get your feedback. And yeah, thanks for watching.